Missing You But You Were Searching All Along by Beckita, VivienneBlue. Chapter 2. Everything is broken. I can't find you. 5 months, 1 week and 1 day ago. Queens, New York City. Peter numbly followed the social worker out of May's room and to the office. He was unsurprised to realise he was not the only minor there. A few young kids, 1 or 2 teens near his age, and a set of what must have been siblings, ranging in age from a toddler to a year or so younger than him, all sat scattered around the waiting area outside the office. "Let's talk in here, Pete." The woman motioned for Peter to follow her into the room. She sat at the chair behind the desk and indicated he should sit in the front of it. "So, Peter, you were one of the dusted, correct?" He winced at her bluntness, but nodded, staring at the desktop in an effort to control his tears. "And your full name is?" "Peter Benjamin Parker," he whispered hoarsely. "Birth date and age pre-blip?" "August 10th, 2001. I'm 15. The questions went on like that. Legal guardian pre-blip. Who were his parents? Where did he go to school? What grade had he been in? Then came the final question. "Is there anyone we can contact for you?" He didn't know what happened to Ned or his family, so he was hesitant to suggest them. He had only met MJ's parents a handful of times, and like Ned's family, he wasn't sure of their current status. There was only one person he could think of contacting. Before Thanos, he knew May had changed her will, naming Tony and Pepper as his legal guardians if anything should happen to her. After the way the receptionist at SI laughed at him, he wasn't sure how this woman would take it, but he couldn't think of anything else. My aunt put in her will that Tony Stark and Pepper Potts were supposed to have custody of me if anything happened to her." He rushed to explain before she could protest. "I used to be Mr. Stark's intern." The woman stared at him blankly, then repeated in a monotone. "Iron Man. You want me to call Iron Man?" Her tone made it perfectly clear she didn't believe him, and so he shrugged helplessly and muttered, "Never mind." She cleared her throat and continued. "So here is what will happen. Currently, you do not exist. I don't say that to be harsh, merely to be realistic. We cannot place you in a foster home until your paperwork is sorted, but we cannot, in good conscience, leave you alone. We have several group homes where we are placing minors in situations such as yours. Once your paperwork is sorted and you are legally resurrected, then we can see about getting you placed in a foster home and registered for school." Peter just nodded, unable to form any coherent thoughts beyond once more being mocked for mentioning his connection to Mr. Stark. It brought up the unpleasant memories of the disbelief from students and teachers surrounding Peter's SI internship. "And I have a date with Black Widow," Flash scoffed. "Peter, it's not that we don't believe you're intelligent enough to handle an internship with SI, Mr. Harrington said hesitantly. "It's just that they don't offer internships to high schoolers." Mrs. Warren sighing in exasperation and saying, "If you're going to lie, Peter, at least make it more believable." Those had all hurt, and Mr. Stark had been livid, showing up at school with Pepper in tow to produce paperwork and photography giving irrefutable proof that Peter was in fact his personal intern. The mumbled apologies from his teacher and the sheer mortification on Flash's face had been absolutely worth it. But this was so much worse, because May isn't there anymore to fight for him. Pepper is distracted by her husband's condition, and Mr. Stark, well, who knows at this point if Mr. Stark has made it or will make it. The pain is unbearable, because before he had a family to have his back. But now, there is no one. 5 months, 1 week ago. Queens, New York City. Happy felt like he had seen most of Queens at least 10 times now. Bucky, Sam and Steve were searching the other boroughs in case they had ended up someplace else, but so far their search had turned up nothing. Happy tried May's workplace first, and in the process discovered that the Spider Kid had been there, and then he had tried every shelter in Queens. There were a couple of people at shelters who recognised Peter, but there was no record of him or May staying at any of them. After the search of shelters came up empty, he begun searching hospitals. This was his 9th one, and he looked at the entrance with dread. What if May were injured? Or the kid? What if he had been injured beyond bruises, bumps and scrapes, and hadn't told anyone so as not to take the focus off of Tony? That would be just like him, Happy muttered, feeling annoyed at the teen. Annoyance over a potentially non-existent injury was an excellent way to mask his worry. He took a deep breath and entered the lobby, strolling purposefully over to the information desk. "Hello," he said politely. There was no need to take out his frustration on the injury-hiding spiderling out on this poor man. Once the man working reception greeted him, Happy continued. "I'm looking for a May Parker or Peter Parker. Can you at least let me know if one or both of them are a patient here?" The man typed something on the computer, frowning as he read the screen. He looked at Happy sympathetically. "We did have a May Parker here, but it seems she was fatally injured and passed away yesterday." Happy froze in shock. Passed away? May? He pinched the bridge of his nose and then ran his hand down his face. "And Peter Parker?" "I don't have a record. Is that her husband?" "Nephew. May was his legal guardian." "You could check with the social services department of the hospital. I know they've been slammed, but if she did have a minor with her, they would have taken custody," the man explained, compassion evident. "It's on the 5th floor. Take those elevators over there." He indicated the direction and repeated his condolences once more. "I am sorry," the woman he talked to said sympathetically, "but I'm not sure how I can help you." "Can you at least tell me where Peter is at?" Happy tried again. Getting information out of this woman was more frustrating than dealing with drunk partying Tony had ever been. She shrugged helplessly. "Look, I wasn't here yesterday, and our records are a disaster because we just haven't had the time to update anything. Our system was already at capacity before the Dusted returned. We are overwhelmed now. Look, the most I can tell you is that a minor in the custody of May Parker was taken into care by the state of New York yesterday afternoon." "Can you at least tell me where the social worker who was here yesterday is at?" Happy tried to keep his voice calm and polite. The woman frowned and then said, "Albany. We're overrun here. Every group home in the city is filled significantly past what is typically legal. We've had to start taking children to other parts of the state." "So, Peter is in Albany?" Happy questioned, finally feeling like he was getting somewhere. The woman shrugged again. "Maybe," she told him, "but a few other children were placed around the city. I have no way of knowing. Look, she'll be back tomorrow. Her name is Kathy Morris. She might be able to give you more information." "Thank you for what you have been able to tell me." Happy turned to leave. "Wait," she called. Happy looked back at her. She bit her lip and said, "She'll also be limited in what she can tell you due to him being a minor in the custody of the state. Your employers, if they really were named guardians in the aunt's will, if they have access to his paperwork, I would encourage them to get on their side of things, getting him re-registered as legally being alive and having a judge give them custody. We have so many children we are caring for that it will take months before we can process them all, maybe years. Some of these minors may age out before we have helped them all. I'd suggest they start the process now so they are reunited quicker." Happy thanked her for the advice and left the room. He didn't want to talk to Pepper until he was someplace more private, but he could call Steve. "Hey, Happy, any news?" Steve asked as soon as he answered. "Unfortunately, Peter's aunt died yesterday." "Oh, no, she was his guardian, right?" "Yeah, Tony and Pepper were named guardians in her will, so eventually they should be able to get Peter. The only problem is I'm not sure where he is. The state has custody, but the social worker who took him into care is in Albany today." "Peter's in Albany?" Steve questioned, surprised. "I'm not sure. The woman working today wasn't sure whether he was there or still in the city. Look, do you think you might be able to check it out? I can have Friday send you a list of approved foster and group homes. Unfortunately, because Peter was just undusted, he isn't in the system, or I would have just had Friday track that. They might be more willing to help if Captain America shows up rather than me. I would feel better if we knew whether or not he was there. Not a problem. I'll grab Sam and we'll head out. Maybe they'll help 2 Avengers. Thanks, Steve. Happy ended the call and had Friday send him the information she had compiled. Once he was in the car, he called Pepper. Happy? She answered almost immediately. Is there news? May died yesterday. He forced himself to get the words out. Pepper gasped. And Peter? The state took him into care. I'm not sure where he is yet, but either here in the city or in Albany. Albany? She questioned. Why Albany? The system is so overloaded they don't have space. Steve is going to head there to check it out. Listen, the woman I talked with suggested that you go ahead and start things on your side. Tony has copies of all Peter's paperwork, right? Yes, it should either be in the safe in the study at the lake house or with our lawyers. I'll call them to see if they have it. If not, would you be able to get it and deliver it to them? Do you have a copy of May's will? She seemed to think proving you've been named guardians would help speed things along. It should be with the rest of the paperwork. I'll call them and let you know if I need you to go out there. Otherwise, keep me updated on Peter's location. Will do, boss, he replied. He paused and asked, How is Tony? He's still in a medically induced coma and will need another surgery or 2, but he's turned a corner. The doctors are confident he'll make it. They're thinking of waking him up at the end of the week. We'll have Roberta bring her over at that point. That's so good to hear, Pep, he said with relief. Thanks for the update. I'll keep you updated on him if you keep me updated on the kid. I need to call the lawyers. Thank you again, Happy. I'll let you know if I need you to get the papers. She paused for a second and then added, As much as I hate to say this, but I don't feel comfortable leaving the suits at his old building anymore. If he is in care, then chances he'll be able to get them are very low. Happy grimaced. That's a good point. I'll see if Sam can grab them for us. I'll make sure they stay safe until the kid can use them again. 5 months, 1 week ago. Queens, New York. The group home was an assault on Peter's heightened senses. It smelled horrible. The stench of unwashed bodies due to the strains of overcrowding, clogged toilets from too much use, slightly burnt food from trying to feed so many children. It was loud. There were at least 4 to 5 children in each room, running wild during the day, constrained to the small yard and the park across the street, the blaring volume of the television so people could hear the volume over the chaos. There was not near enough food to support his metabolism. He had always loved children, so he enjoyed the younger kids, but as lost in grief as he was, he craved solitude. With the permission of the exhausted adults running the place, he wandered the park across the street, wandered the few blocks around the home, trying to calm his mind and reconcile himself with his current reality. It was on these wanderings that he located a few local Link NYC kiosks. While the charging function and Wi-Fi connections were worthless to him without a phone or device, the ability to make calls was useful. He resolved to continue calling SI until someone realised how desperate he was and connected him to Happy or Pepper. Stark Industries, how may I help you? The cheery voice of the receptionist was in stark contrast to his mood. Hello, I have an important message for either Pepper Potts or Happy Hogan, Peter told her. He could practically hear her eyes rolling. You want me to forward your message to the CEO? The woman snorted. The next time, the man who answered told him, Look, for one thing, that is completely against company policy. For another, our Mrs. Potts Stark is currently away on business outside the US. I'm sorry, there is nothing I can do. He tried again and again and again, multiple times a day, bouncing between the different kiosks. 5 times, 8 times, 13 times. On the 18th call, he received a different message. This number is no longer accepting calls from Link NYC kiosks. Your call could not be completed as dialed. 5 months ago, Royal Hospital, Wakanda. Pep, Tony groaned, trying to force his eyes open. He felt like he had gotten hit by a bus. Or an alien. As he blinked his eyes, trying to adjust to the light, and as Pepper's face came into focus, the memory of what had happened flooded him. Not a bus. Infinity stones. And it was then he realised that his right arm wasn't there anymore. "Tony!" Pepper breathed, her voice filled with relief. She reached over to stroke his face, leaning down to kiss his cheek. He tried to move his hand, only hand, to catch hers and realised it was covered in wires and tubes. "Leave it," his wife admonished softly. He dropped the hand back down and drank in her strawberry blonde hair and fair features. "You're beautiful," he whispered, his voice hoarse from disuse. Her laughter rang throughout the room, a beautiful, beautiful sound. "Morgan?" he questioned. "With Roberta," Pepper explained. Tony nodded, satisfied. There was no one he trusted more with his daughter than his surrogate mother. "Now that you're awake, I'll have someone bring them here. We didn't want Morgan here until we had a better idea of your prognosis." That was fair. He swallowed in an effort to wet his dry throat. His wife noticed and held the straw of a large hospital cup to his lips. He sucked greedily. Once his throat was no longer dry, he asked about the next person on his mind. "Pete?" Pepper's eyes filled with tears. "He got separated from us when we rushed you here. I'm so sorry, Tony. I was so worried about you, I didn't realise until it was too late. Sam dropped him off in Queens. We managed to track his suits, but we haven't found him yet." "May?" Pepper shook her head. "We know Peter found her and was taken into care right after she passed, but we don't know where they took him. CPS won't give us any information until we have custody. We thought he might have been moved to Albany. Steve and Sam checked it out, but it was a dead end. I have our lawyers working on getting his legal status and getting us custody." "His suits?" Tony questioned, trying to process the information. "After we found out he was in a group home, I had Sam retrieve them. I didn't want to chance them lying around." His brain felt foggy, like it was filled with cobwebs, but he thought he followed. And Stark Tech lying around was a terrible idea. Retrieving the suits had probably been the better call. But his kid was missing. May was gone, and Peter had vanished. Trying to grasp all this was making him even more exhausted. Overwhelmed, he found himself being lulled back into the peaceful bliss of sleep. 4 months, 3 weeks, and 6 days ago. Queens, New York City. He steeled himself and returned to the group home. He lasted a day before he walked up to one of the workers, asking, "Could I please use the phone to make a phone call?" "Absolutely not," the worker snapped. Then his voice softened and he added apologetically, "We let you do that, we have to let everyone do that. We don't have the resources to do that." Peter debated about heading back to his old building, but it was on the other side of Queens. Without money for transit or his web shooters, he had no way to get there before he would need to check in with the group home workers. He tried again. "Could you all try contacting Pepper Potts or Tony Stark for me, please? I was his intern. He's supposed to get custody of me." "Kid," the man sighed, growing annoyed. "No one is calling Iron Man for you. Don't be ridiculous. We don't have time for your delusions." Peter blinked back the tears and retreated back outside to the park, sitting despondent on a bench, wondering how long he would be stuck here, wondering if Mr. Stark was even alive anymore. The answer to the second question came 3 days later. A few of the younger children had convinced him to join them for games in the living room. The television was on in the background. And suddenly, Pepper's face filled the screen. She explained that her husband was alive. He had recently woken from a coma and was recovering in Wakanda from his injuries. She asked that their family be afforded privacy at this time. Footage showed a woman he recognised as Rhodey's mother following Happy and leading a little girl toward the plane. The captions identified her as Morgan Stark, the 4-year-old daughter of the couple. He didn't even know Mr. Stark had a daughter. He had gotten married and had a daughter. Peter was unsure of what, if any, place he would have in the man's life if he did manage to contact him. He had an actual daughter. What would he do with a random twice-orphaned teen from Queens? The worker he had asked about calling Tony snickered when he heard the news, mockingly saying to Peter, "What, you want me to use my phone to call Wakanda? Why don't you call Captain America while you're at it?" The snide remarks from the workers spread to the other children and teens. Several of them also began mocking him for claiming a connection to Tony Stark. The crowded conditions were already a drain on him, but the mocking made the situation a whole lot more than he could take. 3 days later, in the dead of night, the teen gathered his meagre belongings and slipped out into the night. He was determined to retrieve his suits and get Karen to contact Pepper, and if it turned out the Starks didn't want him, didn't have a place for him because of having a daughter now, well, in that case, he would try to make it on his own, but he absolutely couldn't stay in the group home any longer. 4 months, 2 weeks, and 4 days ago, Royal Hospital, Wakanda. Pepper shooed her daughter out of her husband's room, a resolute look on her face, instructing the girl to go with Roberta to eat lunch. Tony straightened as much as possible. He was still confined to the bed for the most part, although the physical therapist he was working with had gotten him starting walking shorter distances. Princess Yuri had convinced him to accept a vibranium arm as a gift, and they had begun working on the plans for it, as well as beginning conversations with his doctors about when he could use it. They were very insistent that the amputation site be fully healed before attempting to attach the sensors for the prosthetic. "Is it news about Pete?" he questioned. She nodded, fiddling with the phone. "The paperwork went through," she told him. "Peter is officially resurrected and officially ours. At least for an emergency placement. Peter needs to agree for it to be a permanent placement." Tony breathed a sigh of relief. At least when they found the spiderling, no one would be able to take him away from them. "It means CPS has to give us the information now, doesn't it?" he asked. "Yes, it does. I'll call his caseworker in a bit to check in with her and see about transferring Peter to our care." The guilt and regret that filled her tone and was etched on her features tore at Tony's heart. He loved Peter as his own son, had nearly given his life to get the teen back, and grieved not having the spiderling by his side. But he also knew that his wife was in no way responsible for the chain of events that had led to the separation. Tony reached out his arm to snag her hand, drawing her to his side. He tugged her down until she sat on the edge of his bed, pulling her close enough to kiss her temple. "Stop with the self-blame, love," he breathed into her hair. "It's not your fault. We will get him back." Tears filled her eyes. "But if I had just insisted—" "We might not have found May in time for him to say goodbye to her. We might still have run into custody problems with the state. He still may have been taken from May's side and put into care until we got his legal issues sorted," her husband said patiently. "Pep, there are a myriad of things that might have gone wrong, but you know even better than I do that you can't let the might-haves of last hold you down. Learn from my poor choices, please. Don't do that to yourself." Pepper gave him a weak smile at the last part. The irony of Tony Stark lecturing her about not being consumed by guilt or regret was not lost on her. She leaned over and brushed her lips against his. "I'll try not to do that." "Good," he inhaled. He then kissed her a bit more passionately before she pulled away. "As much as I would love to," she looked at him significantly. "I'm thinking the hospital room our daughter or your surrogate mother or any of your doctors may walk into at any moment might not be the best place." Tony laughed and stroked her cheek. "Well, I look forward to it when we finally have the opportunity." The way Pepper blushed was adorable, if he was honest with himself. The CEO took a moment to compose herself before standing. "I'll go call his caseworker to get the transfer of care started. I'll let you know what she says." Thank you for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this chapter. Have a lovely rest of your day.